Torah Or Vayakhel, page Peites, all the way at the end of the 2 lines in the end of the first column. Class is sponsored again by Avram Maradian for Hatzlacha. Okay, the Alter Rebbe is explaining the last union of the Mon. The Alter Rebbe asks, how is it possible that the Malachim eat the Mon if the Mon is physical and the Malachim are spiritual? So the Alter Rebbe started explaining that the level of the Mon in its source is extremely high level of Tal, which comes from Atik, and then through the Ishtalshalis of the world, it comes into Gashmias, but therefore in the source, it's extremely Ruchnias. And he says, therefore, when the Mon comes down here in Gashmias, it's the food of the strong ones, meaning the Malachim, or people down here, it becomes absorbed in the 248 limbs, and there's no pselis, there's no waste. The Gemara says that the Mon was so special, every part of the Mon became digested in the body, and there was no waste in the Mon. So he says, why? Because it was a lofty level of Kedusha. In Kedusha, there's no pselis. And then he says, Shabbos liyodin Mon. Therefore, Shabbos, there was no Mon. So the question is, but everything else comes on Shabbos. Rain comes on Shabbos. Other sustenance comes on Shabbos. Dew falls on Shabbos. So why is it that the Mon couldn't fall on Shabbos? Manishtana, why is the Mon different? So he says that's the reason why. So everything in the world has a constellation that hits it and makes it grow, and that happens on Shabbos too. Mashenkin b'Mon, but the Mon didn't fall on Shabbos. Why is the Mon unique? He said Mishum de b'Mon oyenim shebechinas Tal Eres, because the Mon comes in the level of Tal ubechinas u ef sheleled b'Shabbos. That Mon can fall down on Shabbos because Shabbos, the worlds become elevated to a higher level. But this elevation is only in the internal levels of Kedusha. I'll explain in a second. Not in the external, because they become in the level of Chitzenius. Okay, so he says like this. There's an interesting thing. Shabbos, we know, the world becomes elevated to a higher state. In other words, in simple English, Hashem stopped creating, so the words don't come down. So instead, the world becomes elevated. Vayichulu Hashemayim V'aretz, the world becomes elevated to a much higher level. 1 second. So the world becomes on a much higher level. So the question is, if Hashem stops creating, how does the world exist? We know there has to be continuous creation. So if Hashem continues creating the world, so how can, it stops creating the world, how can the world exist? So Chassidus explains that what's elevated on Shabbos, he says, is only the premius of the world. The external level of the world, that keeps going in Shabbos. So therefore, even though the premius is elevated, but the chitzenius is not. So then Chassidus asks the question, on Rosh Hashanah Hashem leaves the world Rosh Hashanah night until Tkiyah Shefer the next day. So how does the world exist then? So Chassidus explained that the chitzeni, the opposite of Shabbos. By Shabbos, it's the aliyah and the premius. Rosh Hashanah is only the chitzenius. So the chitzenius leaves, but the premius stays. Understand? So on Shabbos, the premius leaves, the chitzenius stays. On Rosh Hashanah, the chitzenius stays, but the premius leaves. So Chassidus asked the question, how does the world exist when Rosh Hashanah falls on Shabbos? So it says, no, not that. So the Chassidus answered, the premius of the chitzenius of the premius, the ganze mishmash. But bottom line, the world exists. One second. So he says over here that why can't the Mon fall on Shabbos? Because the Mon comes from premius. The premius of the world is elevated on Shabbos. If it's elevated, how could the Mon come down? All the other hashpas of the world come from the external level. The external level stays down here. So all the other external levels can be revealed in the world because the world stays as is. But the pneumius of the world becomes elevated on Shabbos if the man comes from pneumius. So therefore the pneumius can be revealed down here. One second, what?
So we said that also about person's parnasa, places parnasa come from pneumius, and therefore on Shabbos you're not getting from pneumius, so that's why parnasa doesn't come on Shabbos.
Never heard that. Now again, I'm not saying it's not true, I never heard it.
On Shabbat, we're not supposed to even think about work, right?
Right.
How does Hashem want the work this is Machshava?
Because Hashem creates the world Shabbos and Machshava.
We're not supposed to think.
He can't think.
Well, how we don't think? What's the difference? When do you think?
He's not allowed to think either.
When does anybody ever think?
I think that I think.
Okay, that's the problem.
As far as we are concerned, we have to just consume the mind. How he makes it, is it our business?
No, but the question is, how could that shpa come down? I mean, why doesn't the man fall on Shabbos if everything else comes down on Shabbos? So the Rebbe says, because, how the Rebbe explains, because the man is pneumius, and Shabbos, the pneumius is elevated. Vim came moving, Eichshe b'man ha'yislavish tal eidis. Hainu ha'idei ishtalshes mi madrega lemadrega. Therefore, therefore, there's no comparison between the man down here versus the man in heaven. Shalamata down here, nasi gashmi. It beats physical the man. But in the spiritual realm, it's still spiritual. So the malachim eat the man before it comes down into the Gashmistic world. So then it's Ruchnius, a very lofty level of Ruchnius, Pnimius, from Atik, and that's what sustains the Malachim. Then a person can understand the level. This is all, by the way, explained now. The Rebbe started off by saying there's Mamala Kol Almin and Seviv Kol Almin. And this is all explanation of Mamala Kol Almin. And he says, a person can understand the level of Mamala Kol Almin, which is Yerid, the Sachayis, the descent of the life of Shamirim, Amayels Yerid, and Nimshach Mislabish B'chol Eilam, the Fi Erkoi B'chinasi. Okay? So therefore, what's Mamala Kol Almin? Is he started off by saying, and then he went into the Man and all the Malachim and all that stuff. Bottom line is, Mamala Kol Almin means every world gets sustained based on the level of that world. Whatever the vessel is, like he says, the eyes are the vessel for sight, that's what it gets. The ears are the vessel for hearing, that's what it gets. So every world, Atzilus gets what Atzilus needs, what the vessel of Atzilus can handle, Bria, Yitzir, and Nasir. All also understand this. And what it says in Parsha Shlach, Hayesh ba'etzem ayin, the Moshe Rabbeinu sent the Meraglim, the spies to Yisrael, and he says, check out if there's a tree or not. I mean, that's the funny thing is, you want to know if there's a tree or not. I mean, take a drone and go over and see if there's a tree. Upish, as a Kaddish, what did Moshe Rabbeinu want to know? He didn't want to know if they're physical trees. What difference does it make? Do you plant trees? Big deal. He wanted to know what type of sustenance comes into Eretz Yisrael, which is Eitz HaChayim, which is the level of Chochmah. Like it says, Chochmah Techaya. He wanted to know, Hayesh ba'etz im ayin. So here, listen to how the Rebbe is defining it. I want to know if the hashpah comes from the level of Eitz HaChayim, which is Chochmah, or does it come from the level of Ayin higher than Chochmah? Chochmah ma'ayin timatze. Chochmah comes from nothing. Yesh mi'ayin, correct? So the Moshe Rabbeinu said to the Yidden, Zeir says, Hayesh ba'etz ma'ayin is the hashpah in Eretz Yisrael from the 10 spheres of Hishtalshelis, Chochmah, Eitz HaChayim, or Ayin. Does it come from the level of Ayin? Where's the hashpah of Eretz Yisrael come from? V'gam Eitz Loshen Eitz V'Sishiyah Eitz comes from the word eitza, advice. That's the level of chachma. Or he wanted to know, shenim shel bechinas ayin, shel bechinas shel amayla madregas hachachma, like it says hachachma ma'ayin timotze. So he says, where is the sustenance? It's remarkable to say. Where Moshe Rabbeinu is not here asking what there's a tree. What's the big difference if there's a tree? I understand that the city's strong, weak, fortified. None. Moshe Rabbeinu says, I need to know where the Hashpah of Eretz Yisrael is coming from. Is it coming from the level of Chachma, Hishtaushulus? And he says, what simon did Moshe Rabbeinu give them? Bring back from the fruits of the land. What did he want? If in Eretz Yisrael fruits will grow normally, like all the other countries, then we know it comes from Mishtaushus. It's a regular hashpah like everywhere else. Like it says, the world and everything in it comes from the level of Chochmah Law Bereshis, and like Targum Yonason says, B'chuchmasa. The word Bereshis, Bar Elikim, Chassidus always brings out this Targum Yonason that says B'chuchmasa. Simply, Targum Unkla says that the Bereshis being Bekadman at the beginning, God created. The Targum Yonason says B'chuchmasa. Bereshis means with Chochmah Hashem created the world. But if Moshe Rabbeinu said, you're going to see the fruits that are not normally grown fruits, they're overgrown. Like the Gemara says at the end of Ksubis, and that's why did Moshe Rabbeinu say bring back the fruits? But Moshe Rabbeinu wanted to see, are the fruits normal? That means Eretz Yisrael like every other country. If the fruits come back different, then we know Eretz Yisrael is a greater hashpah. The Meraglim, who intended for evil, that's why you could take everything and turn it around to evil. The Meraglim brought back the fruits, Rashi says, not Yeshua and Kalev. Why did all the other Meraglim bring back the fruit? They wanted to tell Moshe Rabbeinu, you see how overgrown the fruits are? That's how overgrown the people are. And if they're so big, we're never going to be able to conquer them.
But Moshe Rabbeinu told them, check for ayin. If you see the fruit is me'ayin.
That's what Moshe Rabbeinu's intent was. They took it the wrong way. Yeah, let's see if there's fruits. They weren't on Moshe Rabbeinu's level.
That even makes them worse.
What?
Because they are
Here you see, we are learning that Hashem gives different energy to different things. The eye cannot hear a thing. Is my understanding correct? Hashem gives one energy everywhere. It depends on the cleave, what you pull in.
That is...
There's two different ways of looking at it.
That what you're saying is Seviv Kol Almin. In Mamala Kol Almin, in the level of Mamala, the permeating level, each level gets what it owns. The life from the neshama is not a plain battery that the eyes could see and the ear could hear. No, that's in the general chayes. In the individual level, there is a power of sight that the neshama has. In other words, the neshama comes into the body, it's like a battery, the whole body is alive. Okay. Then when it comes into details of functioning, over there the neshama has various different levels.
It's not as long as the neshama has to do with the cleave. The eye,
but the power of the sight comes into the eye. There is a power of sight.
So there's two ways.
That's what exactly what he's explaining here. There's Mamala Kol Almin, the permeating level, that the Or comes down based on the level of the Keli. And then you have a general level that it is what it is. Whatever you take, you take. In other words, the sun comes shining, and if you open the curtains, you have light. You close the curtains, you don't have light. That's not the Mamala Kol Almin. That's Sefer Kol Almin. It's coming down all over. There's no difference in the Keli.
But Klali is not the Keli dependent, right?
Oh?
The Klali, the general, the sober.
Right.
It keeps coming.
Yeah. Even Mamalukam keeps coming.
But you have to have
The vessel.
the vessel for it.
So that's why the eyes are the vessel for sight, and inanimate is the vessel for inanimate and plant and animal and human.
What you're saying that there is an energy of sight inside that massive energy. Nothing to do with the kli.
Correct.
Wow.
That's why go and get the money. Then go. It's fine.
I'll never forget, we were learning by Rabbi. This is Toshin Chav Zion, 1967. We were in this class in high school. And we're learning Derech Mitzvah Secha about Sheish Mitzvah Tefillah. And over there, the Tzemach Tzedek is explaining that in Atzilis, it's like colorful kalim, but the art is all the same. The water is all the same. In other words, the water is the same water in the green glass than the yellow glass and the purple glass, and it's all the same water. It's just the way it looks from outside. And therefore, the Tzemach Tzedek explains, because the art is all the same, so therefore you can have what the expression is in Kabbalah, art chesed b'klei ha'gvura. The art of chesed could come into gvura. So we're learning it. And he looks at us and he says, I'm paraphrasing, you bunch of morons, why aren't you asking a simple question here? If the art is colorless, why is it called Or HaChesed in the Keli of Gevura? Then it's not Or HaChesed, it's colorless. You're saying the art is colorless water. So he says, why is it called Or HaChesed b'Klei Gevura? So he didn't answer it. But the answer is because in the art itself there's Taka Chesed. That Or HaChesed comes into Chesed. Why does this art come into Chesed, this art come into Gevura? Because there's a connection in the art to Chesed also. Even in the art, that's in the level of Mamalukulam.
Is this a regular white light? Has all the colors in it?
White and black. Those are the two contrasting colors. All colors and no colors.
The whole spectrum? The whole spectrum is in white light. So.
Right.
Well, you answered 30 years old question.
I answered a 30-year-old question you have.
I have.
What was the question?
That's not dependent only on kli, the actual energy inside there.
When it comes to let's speak our language that we can understand. When the eye sees and the power comes from the neshama, the power of the koyach of the neshama coming into the eye is the power of sight. It's not just a plain power. Okay, the eye, it's like with the battery, right? You put it's not like that. The power of sight that the neshama has in detail, that's mamalo kol alma. Seva Kalma means the neshama comes in the body, the person's alive. It doesn't matter what the story is.
So when a chassid say a blessing for somebody who doesn't have the power of sight, he's not just fixing
One sec. What?
He's not just fixing the kli, he actually bringing the power of sight back to the eye.
Once the keli functions, the power comes automatically. In other words, when you want to see, you don't say, okay, neshama, I want to press the computer. Okay, I want to see, and you see.
It's always there.
It's always there. And that's what like we learned. Why could two blind people give birth to somebody who sees? So science says, medical science says, the genes skip a generation.
Right.
In Chassidus, it's very simple. The neshama's power of sight is always there. The problem is either in the vessel or in the connection, in the wiring from the neshama to the body. So therefore, but the power, a blind person has the power of sight. It's not that he doesn't have the power of sight. He has the power of sight. Something's wrong either in the vessel or in the connection. So if the child is born with that connection and that proper eye, so you can see. It's much simpler according to Chassidus.
The tzaddik can connect. You can connect it, meaning that bring the prati into the vessel,
Correct.
but not fix the vessel.
A tzaddik's power is to give somebody that, again, like we know many stories, doctors say this woman will never give birth.
Right.
Meaning medically it's impossible for this woman to give birth. And then she gives birth.
Sorry, when?
Yeah, but Sarah is a different story. If she didn't even have a womb and they let's leave Sarah Maina out. That's a different story. Right? A woman that medically cannot give birth. Or somebody said medically, so you read the stories. They can't see, and the doctor says you'll never be able to see.
What happened? How does he fix it?
So what does he do? I don't know. Ask him. He does.
Does he fix the kli or does he go right into it?
You know what he could do sometimes? I don't know. But let me explain to you a number of possibilities. You know what a bypass is?
Yeah.
When you have a blocked artery, so what do? You go around it. That artery is dysfunctional. But what happens if you bypass it? A tzaddik bypasses it. He bypasses the part that you can't have and he makes it happen. I don't know what he does. You're asking me what he does. Somebody asked the Rebbe once, this is what they say. Somebody asked the Rebbe that people ask you questions. Man, you never saw the charts. You never saw how do you know? How do you know? So the Rebbe said, when people ask me a question, I have a feeling, a gut instinct, whatever you want to call it. So the person asked the Rebbe, how do you get that? He said, that's my business. In other words, that's what a Rebbe is. It's not Ava. It's Kedusha higher than world. It's not love.
But in the case of that,
Somebody once asked the Rebbe, not from, like a student or something, says the Rebbe, what I don't understand, why the Chassidim revere you and love you to such an unbelievable extent? Why? So the Rebbe answered them, because I love them unconditionally infinite. So they're reciprocating, that's all it is. You're talking about different levels. A tzaddik geiz HaKadosh Baruch Hu Mekayim means, Rabbi Pinchas ben Yair had to cross the Nar Ganun, and he said, stop flowing. Yeah? How did he do it? He did it. He stopped it. The nature waters to flow. He went above it. He controlled it with the level above nature. In nature, you can't have children. You can't see. But if you go supernatural, then the natural problem doesn't exist. How does that work? You know what? It's not our business.
As long as it works.
As long as it works. No. As long as it works, and we know that the miracle happened. In other words, Hashem did a miracle through the Rebbe, and therefore we need to be appreciative to both. And appreciative doesn't mean writing a thank you letter. That's a cop-out. Appreciative means going out of our way to do what they want us to do in a way that's difficult for us. That's showing appreciation. In any relationship, when do you really see somebody love somebody? Not when it's easy and you do it for them.
When you give them your credit card.
That's for some people is easy. I'm saying when you do something for them that they see is beyond really what you would normally like to do, and you're going out of your way to do something for them, that's what love is all about.
We've been doing that for all our lives, but they don't appreciate it.
It's a good thing you sponsored the class, or else I would comment something. No, but this is one of those. Okay, let's go right to it. Okay, Azjuv, and then Moshe Rabbeinu said, I'll understand. Shashpal, Sham comes in the level of Ayin, which is a level higher than Chochmah. Sheminam Shamnim, Shagili Yosef, Shlei Aidei Tzimtzum. And then you get the hashpah. Then that's what Moshe Rabbeinu wanted to find out. Is it 8 like any other 8s, any other country, meaning a normal hashpah from Chachma, Bereshis, or does it come from the level of Ayin? From here we can understand even a physical hashpah. Therefore we can understand that in Gashmius comes a level of Elokus which is higher than Chachma. Meaning, even though the pearl hashpah comes down all the way down into the Gashmius, but the Jew realizes that it still has the hashpah of ayin in it. Like when Rebbe Merash said Parnasa nowadays is like the one from heaven, meaning in Parnasa today there's this level of tal, of atik, of ayin that comes down into the physical hashpah. The level of Mamala Kol Almin, Shashpa Nimshach Merei Mamalis Mamish. Malak Kol Almin, even Mamala, the limited level of it, comes from a very lofty level. It comes down based on every level accordingly. Therefore there's so many different levels. And here the Alter Rebbe says another interesting thing. Inanimate, plant, animal, and human is not only in this world. He says every world there's daimim semei chai medaber in ruchnius. And even in daimim you can have water is inanimate and earth is inanimate. And the mountains are inanimate, and sand is inanimate. There's a lot of different levels of each one.
It says it in every word. It says it every word, or just.
Afilu b'chol elam mischalek l'dal b'chinas daim mitzmechayim medabel. In every world, notice how the place in the Chassidus elaborates which one what. Every world is daim mitzmechayim medabel, because you have every world has basically 4 levels. Yud Kei Vav Kei, right? Yud is Chachma, Hey is Bina, Vav is 6 Vidus, and Hey is Malchus. So Daimon Tzmei Chai Medaber also has to do with the 4 letters of Yud Kei Vav Kei, the 4 words. I mean, it's all interconnected with the number 4.
In Bria, it started having a physicality.
No, Bria is spiritual.
Still.
This world, Asiya, there's a spiritual Asiya, and our world is down here, that's physical Asiya.
Earth in the first world.
Because on the spiritual level, there's the lowest level of that world. It's called inanimate. Malchus is called inanimate.
Spiritual.
Malchus, the spiritual source of dirt offered is Malchus, right? And we learned it's the lowest level, but only Malchus produces. So every level of Malchus in every world is a level of Daimon. By the way, this whole column is all a parentheses, probably from the Samach Tzedek, because all the Alter Rebbe started at the beginning of the Maimon. What Mamala Kol Almin is, what saving now? So he says, this whole thing that we just learned, the last 2 days, is all a comment of the Samach Tzedek, adding to the explanation of what the Alter Rebbe said.